your joy is your joy. And no one can take that joy from you. There are going to be circumstances that are hard. There are going to be tiresome times in your marriage and in your friendships with anything in life in general, but your joy is yours. It's in your cup, and no one can take that from you, no matter your circumstances.
Hello, welcome to Adventures from the Homefront. I'm Amanda. This is Jessica. We have our guests today, Ashton, Olivia, and Kate. Today we are going to be talking about Bloom Where You Were Planted, about making the best of each duty station that you're sent to. So Ashton, how long have you been a military spouse?
Almost 9 years. So I met my husband a little over 8 years ago, and we were married the same year. So from the day we met to the day we married, it's like 7 months.
Oh,
so
that's awesome.
almost 9 years.
Oh, congratulations. And which branch is he in?
He's Navy, and he's on a submarine.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Navy.
New wife.
Sorry,
that's
your
trying to get
husband's a
more.
nuke too?
He is in
That's
yes.
right. I forgot that.
Yep.
Poor Amanda.
Still rocking the Coast Guard. What is the best piece of advice that you can give a military spouse?
I think the best piece of advice I can give is to actually just dive into your community and bloom where you're planted. You never know what you're going to be given as far as a duty station, or as far as a community, or as far as a house, or a school district, or anything of that nature, and nothing ever goes as planned. So just making sure that you can roll with the punches and dig your roots down deep and ensure that no matter where you are, you have that community to help fill your cup.
Yeah,
Nice.
absolutely.
I love that. So speaking of blooming where you're planted, have you guys ever had to face a situation orders wise where you guys got sent someplace you just absolutely were not excited about and had to make the best of it?
Yeah, so we actually met in Charleston, which is where I'm from, Charleston, South Carolina.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
I know, right? It's like the best duty station. And that's actually where I was born, that's where I was raised. It's where all of my family is. And I had my son in the hospital on a Tuesday. We were sent home on Thursday. On Saturday, we checked and we had orders to Hawaii. But I had a 4-day-old baby. He wasn't even off of paternity leave yet. So I had my son. He was like 4 days old, and found out we were going to Hawaii. And his orders were actually before he was even 6 weeks old. So we knew we couldn't even fly or get there. So we were trying to get in touch with the detailer on the next Monday. He was trying to go into work. I had this brand new baby. I didn't know what I was doing. I was definitely not ready to be a mom. I was 21 years old and just in shock of, I just got married after meeting my husband less than a year ago. Now we have a baby, and now my entire world is getting flipped upside down.
Yeah. And you're never ready to be a mom.
Never.
No matter how much you think you're ready, people will plan for years to become parents. Nothing really truly prepares you till you're in it.
Yeah. So we got out there, and we just didn't have any family. We didn't have any friends. We didn't know anybody out there. We moved out there. We got our house the day that the movers were unpacking our house and all of our stuff. He comes home and says, hey, they switched me boats. I'm not going to this boat. I'm going to this boat. And we deploy in 2 weeks. So not only...
Was it still Hawaii?
It was still Hawaii. So it was after we had actually already flown out there. All of our stuff had already been PCS'd.
But you thought you had some time to get settled and acclimated to your new environment before your husband was gonna.
Yeah, it was supposed to be
8
months before they were deploying again, and they switched him subs. So it was this big shock. I'd never done a deployment. I'd never even done an underway. So my first underway was deployment, in which they went something like 80-something days of silence. It's great. It's great. So that one was really rough. The day we moved to Hawaii, I was walking down. I had been in the stroller. I'm going to go get coffee at Starbucks, and a homeless man spit on me. Oh, yeah. And so that's and if anybody's lived in Hawaii, they're laughing because they know
that was
it's such a big thing with the homeless population in downtown Honolulu.
Yeah.
And that put a bad taste in my mouth. And it was actually Hawaii that taught me bloom where you're planted. For the first 2 years, I just hated it. I sulked every day. I was mad. I was bitter. I was angry. And I wasn't making the friendships. Who wants to be friends with somebody who's like, ugh, I hate everything. I don't like it here. It's hot. There's too much sunshine. I don't want to go to the beach. Like, who wants to be friends with negative Nancy? And so that's when I learned I have to bloom where I'm planted. This is not where I'm going to be forever. And I actually made some of the most genuine friendships that I've ever made living out there. And what's great is those friendships have continued, and we still talk to each other, we still rely on each other, and those friendships are going to be for life based off of the experiences we had in Hawaii.
That's so cool. That's really neat.
Yeah.
That was like, I have to be honest, the first thing that stuck out to me when we met for coffee and I was like, hey, are you going to come on the show? And you're like, yeah, let's do it. It's just how positive you were. Like, you exude this positivity in your life, and I think that it just rubs off on everybody around you. But you really have to, sometimes that doesn't necessarily come easy to everybody, and sometimes you just have to tell yourself, I'm going to choose to be positive, even though I feel like I just want to crawl into a hole and cry.
And that's one of the things I told you, is your joy is your joy. And no one can take that joy from you. There are going to be circumstances that are hard. There are going to be tiresome times in your marriage and in your friendships with anything in life in general, but your joy is yours. It's in your cup, and no one can take that from you, no matter your circumstances. I went through a lot growing up with sexual abuse and domestic abuse, and moving out on my own. My mother was a drug dealer. I mean, I went through a lot as a child, and learning that they cannot take my joy, that it's my joy, has taught me that is how I can bloom anywhere. So if you put me here or if you put me there, I'm going to make the best of it, because the Navy doesn't dictate my life.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
That's so cool. Yeah, because it's true. Like, a lot of times you hear people say, like, oh yeah, I've been married to my husband for X amount of years, and I've been married to the Navy for X amount of years. Because sometimes it does feel like they're running your life, but when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, like, you're the one who has to be able to sleep at the end of the day, like, put your head on your pillow and know, like, I gave it my all today, like,
and I failed.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
And that's because we're going to have days where we want to crawl into a ball. And that's normal. It's normal to feel emotions. I don't want people to think you are just happy all the time and that's okay. And my personality gives that impression. And I know a lot of times people are like, oh my gosh, you're so happy. It's great. But the people who are my deepest friends see me when I'm at my worst, and I'm just at my wit's end, and I'm like, I am done. I'm done with my kids for the day. I can hang them out the window. Like, I am done. And I know every mom has felt that, and that's normal. It's, you want to feel those emotions, because when you look back at your life, not everything you remember is happy. You remember the times that was sad, and you remember a specific instance, like when you were hurt and you broke your arm, like, you remember that. And those are the things that are going to get you from point A to point B, and it's never a straight line. And if we were to feel just happiness and joy at the same time, it wouldn't be happiness or joy, because we wouldn't know any other emotion we're feeling.
True.
But you learn from those, from that, and you also grow stronger as a person. So, I mean, I completely understand, because, like, when we moved to Charleston, like, I had to drop everything, and so I definitely became very introverted and wanted to stay in my own little hole. And then that's when I had to, like, finally get out, go talk to people, find a job, do this, do that. And moving here, that's, like, how I met, like, you lovely ladies, like, just trying to talk. So I completely understand that.
We moved to Minnesota, and I remember my husband picked Minnesota, and he could have gone to, like, a ton of other places, and I was like,
But why?
so mad. And that was our very first, like, station together. And I was from North Carolina, like, I was a flip-flop beach bum girl, and then not even a snow bunny, because it's literally too cold to snow in Minnesota. I was so upset. I was like, oh my god. And I go up there, and hey, everybody's freezing, and it's kind of what brings you together. And some of, like, I'm still friends with those people today.
Yeah.
And that was 10 years ago.
And that's the thing, it's all about building relationships. I feel like if you can build meaningful relationships, no matter where you go, you're going to have an easier time, a faster time adjusting as quickly as you can find people to connect with. It just makes that a lot easier. When we first moved to Charleston, it took me like, I feel like a year before I actually started meeting people, because I just didn't put myself out there and try. It took me that much time to build up the courage to like say, okay, I'm going to go to this event, or oh look, you know, like the housing's putting on a barbecue. I'm going to go and I'm going to bring my kids and I'm going to see if I can like say hi to like 2 people or something, you know. But the quicker you do that, the easier it is.
Yeah.
I think for people to learn to bloom where you're planted is to do just that. But to not go out there and put on like your nicest, newest clothes, and to go out there and hope that your kids like are on their best behavior. Because if somebody's walking around with their head up their rear end, like, I'm awesome, I just moved here, I'm
so
great.
cute.
Right. Those are not the people who's going to draw your attention. You want to meet people and be genuine from the beginning. And if you're not being who you are in the beginning, like I said earlier, the people who are going to be your best friends are going to be the ones who see you at your worst and see you at the best and love you at all the times in between. And if you can't go out there and say, oh my gosh, look at my kid, she's sticking a bead up her nose and, you know, that's normal for me.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, what else are you going to do?
Right. And well, true what you said, that's so true, that like if you have this sort of arrogance because you're trying to overcompensate for maybe a lack of self-confidence or meeting new people or something like that, and so you put that arrogance,
Or just that wall.
that wall up, so everybody else who's at that event feels that same like pit in their
Tension,
stomach, like that same like, are people gonna like me? Are people gonna
Yeah.
do this? And when they see that, they're like, oh, I'm not talking to you because you've got it all together and I don't have anything together or anything figured out. And so it can really like hinder you from building those
I
relationships.
can't tell you how many times my husband told me the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Because I would get all of those worries. I'd have huge anxiety attacks about meeting new people. And he's like, honey, I promise they feel the exact same way you are right now. Like they're terrified to get out. They're terrified to meet new people. Because they're also having to be traveled around, the United States, the world. Like, they're just never going to stay in one place.
Yeah.
Well, you think of the FRG, your Family Readiness Group. So I don't know if it's a different name. Is it different for Coast Guard, or is it still FRG?
No,
Basically.
I don't think so. I don't think it's that. Like, we have like work life and stuff like that.
Do you have like a
but-
group of like
The
wives,
spouses?
the spouses that get together and like
Do you like
And-
fundraisers and like talk about
Fundraisers
upcoming deployments?
do
and stuff like that?
brunches and
No.
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 I mean, we
Well-
kind of just like use Facebook and like we'll get
Okay.
together like,
Like
that
separately.
type of stuff.
Oh, okay.
Or like if somebody on the boat, because like our boats are a lot smaller. I mean, Ryan's usually on boats with 65 people and only half of those people might be married.
Okay.
So at that point, it's kind of like, hey, I'm having a barbecue this weekend. Who wants to come?
Yeah,
And you kind of get like word around like that. Or, the ombudsman will get involved and they'll post something and they'll be like, oh, hey, station such and such is trying to do a family day. Like everybody's invited. So that kind of thing.
That's
But yeah.
interesting. And so do you think that having a smaller, like being a part of a smaller boat in a very small community, do you feel like that makes it easier or harder to make those connections with people?
I think easier because it almost seems like, there's kind of, I don't want to say less drama because, every place has their own little piece of drama, but it's very much like there's not a lot of people to connect with. And so you got to make like the best, like you become friends with people that you probably never would because you have so many differences with them. But it's like, if you don't make friends with these people, that's it. You're just alone for like 4 years. So, I think it kind of makes it easier.
Yeah.
I would probably say
Because you're not one of thousands, you're one of
And
you
if-
know,
yeah, and if
less than
they're-
100 maybe.
Right, and if there is a discrepancy, like people kind of work it out really fast
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want it starts to affect your boat life and it spreads.
Well,
So-
that's the flip coin of having a really tight knit community is when things do go wrong, it can cause a lot of more tension because it's not like you can just go work on the other side of the ship or something.
Right.
You see these people all the time.
And that's why it's so important to build community, not only with your boat or your command and the spouses who are going through the same thing you are, but to build your community in your community. You need to have friends, and I call them family, friends who have become family.
Yeah.
Those are girls who are now your sisters. Those guys who are now your brother that you can call and say, hey, my sink is spraying water everywhere. I need you over here. And nobody would ever bat an eye. And that if you're not building your community outside, it's not going to help you.
Outside of just the military community.
Correct. I mean,
So that's
and
the
it
thing.
is great to have military community. I mean, even if it's another military spouse who's not in the same branch or not on the same ship. I mean, one of my best friends, her husband, they're on a different submarine, but we were friends in Hawaii and now we're friends here, and our kids have known each other literally their entire lives. And she is a very, very important friend to me, and especially to have here because there are things we can relate about, but then we have our big differences as well. And I think that just by building your community outside, whether that's in your neighborhood, whether that's your church, and for people, you know, who do go to church or don't go to church, maybe it's a synagogue, maybe it's a cathedral, a temple, whatever religious preference you have, you need to find that community. Maybe you're a runner and it's the running community, or maybe you're an artist and you're getting into like the local, like the Chrysler Museum and trying to get some artwork out there, or maybe you have a specific hobby like photography and you're working with other photographers. So building your network or your community doesn't have to be just religion, and it doesn't have to be just within the military. It can be whatever you want it to be. And I think that's where people are like, oh, well, church scares me. Oh, well, the wives scare me because when I walk in there, I feel like the black sheep when I just walk into the room. But there's so many other ways to get involved that it doesn't have to be just related to that. I mean, you got to think there's the Greek festival coming up. I mean, and that's a huge event in downtown Norfolk. And so for people to go there, maybe they're just going with one friend, but that one friend might see somebody else, and then you're meeting them. And honestly, these people are going to have to go through really bad friendships to get the friendships that really truly count. And I don't want people to get discouraged. Well, I try to make a friend, but it just didn't work out with us, because that's going to happen. I mean, think about dating or making friendships at other duty stations, that you have to get out into the community and know that it's not easy, but when you do get rooted, you feel like you have a full support system.
That's awesome.
I feel so like blessed. The industry that I work in, like it is such. I'm a cosmetologist. Like I'm talking to people all day, every day. Small talk, getting these amazing stories about their lives, and it's just such a blessing moving so much and having that option to be like, okay, like I don't need to feel like I'm being antisocial, because that's literally my job, is to be talking to people and meeting Jess, who randomly comes in and just gets a haircut and like things like that. Like,
Oh yeah, my son now will be like, hey, can we go visit Olivia at work? And like we'll just show up at her work and be like, hey, like Edward just wanted to say hi.
and all of my coworkers are like, that little boy is so cute. 'Cause, like, and it's crazy things like that. That's just like finding your niche, finding where you're happy and where you're able to find people of like-mindedness. Like exactly like Ashton's saying, like it doesn't have to be on your ship. It can be through your career or through a different community aspect. And we have done things through the salon with the community, and it just feels so much like you're part of something.
And I do think that you brought up, like, you kind of hit an interesting point. You know, one of the things that I always tell people as a piece of advice, like new spouses and stuff, that, you know, their husbands are in, and I always tell them, like, the last thing you want to do is burn a bridge with somebody, because especially in the Coast Guard, the community is so small. I just threw a birthday party for my son, and 90% of the women that were there yesterday were all people that I've stationed with the last 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Because we've been to multiple duty stations together. So it's like, even if you meet somebody that you don't necessarily like have much in common with, like, be open to them, because you might be 6 years later, you might have all the, now you guys both have kids, now you guys are both working, now you guys like, you know what I mean?
That's
Like,
true. Yeah, life goes on and people change. Like, we're constantly changing, and so somebody who could have really annoyed you a couple years ago could be like your best friend now. You don't know.
Exactly. So
That's true.
And the thing is we're all growing up together.
Yeah.
When you get married very young, I don't know if anybody else got married, but I met my husband at 20, and we were married at 21.
Yep.
Well, I was 21, but that's young. And so since then, now that I'm almost 30, that's a lot of growing up you do in your 20s. Like, you're finding who you are, you're finding who your spouse is, and you're not always going to be on the same page. And it's the same thing with your friends. Even though, oh, oops, we got pregnant, oops, we're having a kid. Well, you're 21, all your other friends are on a whole nother level than you are because you're pregnant. And
But give them a few years.
But then give them 2 years, and then the tides start rolling. And just by maintaining those friendships, and when your friends are going through a hard time, just picking up the phone, hey, I love you and miss you. I'm sorry you're going through a hard time, but if you need someone to talk to, feel free to call me. And you don't have to push them to talk to you. You don't need to tell them everything's going to be okay. They already know that. You don't need to tell them it's all for a reason. I mean, this is literally what my pastor preached about yesterday. But you just need to say, hey, I'm here for you. Anything you need. You need dinner? Let me know. Bring it right over.
Well, and that's the thing too. So you can't go into situations thinking, what can you give me? Like, that's not how to build meaningful friendships. Sometimes you have to step back and say, you know what, like, I want to make friends, I want to make meaningful relationships. So you have to approach it from that standpoint of like, what can I do for you sometimes? It can't just be like, me. Like, spend time with me, give me attention. I want to go do this. Like, you really have to take interest in other people's lives and their hardships and their joys, and come alongside them and work through those.
So my career is human resources, and so a big thing in my career is not, hey, this is me, this is what I do, this is what I love. How about, it's taking interest in your employees. What do they like? What do they enjoy? And finding what they're about. Like, what are their hobbies? And by asking them questions and getting to know who they are, they're naturally going to gravitate to you and then ask you the reciprocating questions. And I think that's a big thing that people forget is, oh, well, I've done this and I've been here and I have these accolades and I've worked these philanthropies, and that's all great, but you're not a walking resume. And I have to think that to myself quite often, because I'm always like networking, like, oh, well, I've done this, this, and this. I'd be more than happy to do this, this, and this for you. Like, no problem.
That was exactly how you were when we first met. I was like, girl, calm down, I like you. Like, you don't have to sell me. Like,
and
you're
so
good. But it's true. Sometimes you feel like you have to impress the other person. Almost.
And so just by taking a step back and saying, I'm not going to ask any question, or I'm not going to tell them about me, I'm just going to ask questions and learn about them. And just how you can serve your friends or your classmates if you're in school, or another spouse, like, how can you serve them and how can you serve your community? Because it's not just about like when you're coming into a community and you're trying to get rooted, but how can you be a light into this community too, because it's a big thing.
That's so cool. So Amanda and I, well, all the girls and I have actually been talking recently that we are going to start, can we say this? Should we talk about this now? We haven't even really talked about it all as a group, but I think it's kind of fitting for what we're talking about right now. Yeah? So we are going to be starting, hopefully this summer, we're going to be starting doing monthly mixers here in Hampton Roads for spouses through Adventures from the Homefront. So, because I think that's so true, like, you have to connect with your community. You can't just, it's fun to get on the Facebook groups and like talk to people and stuff like that, but those face-to-face interactions are so important. And sometimes you just want something to invite you to be like, hey, like, we're doing this fun event, you know, we're gonna go paint and drink some wine, or we're gonna go
Mac and Marks.
Yeah. Olivia's like, we should do like macrame. You were just telling me about this great place in Virginia Beach that you can like
It's called Plant Bar.
plant bar.
You go and make your own little like succulent things.
Yeah.
So
So yeah, we're gonna be starting to plan some events and probably do one a month, and we'll do a mix of, you know, girls' night out stuff, more family-oriented stuff, like maybe trips to the zoo or something like that, but just where we can all come together and meet face-to-face and make those connections and share with each other our journeys and stuff. So.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's cool. You just reminded me of that, like, through this whole episode. Like, everything you're saying, like, yes, that's why we need to do this. Yes.
and Jess is just dropping the bomb.
So, what can you guys do to serve your community in a new way that you haven't done before? So, like, I am big into philanthropy and giving back to the community. So, I have a couple that I'm like really gung-ho about. I volunteer for St. Jude. I help with the walk and run every single year, and I absolutely love it. And then I also love to go and do time at the food bank as well and hand out food. When I was younger, I was actually on the receiving end and having to get food stamps and stand in line and get the food. And so every time I go there, it's just like, so emotional, and I love it. But they're always looking for volunteers. And I think any way you can give to your community in any realm, whether it's nonprofit or for-profit, you know, is great.
Well, when I was in high school, I loved doing this. I volunteered to be like a coach for like Little League. So it was like a Little League cheerleading squad. So like these little girls would do it. But it was so sweet because it gave them like so much confidence. And I guess if I could pick something, it would, you know, to do something with like community sports, like whether it was soccer or cheerleading or dance or something like that. Like I would love to give kids that joy again.
Well, and you've been an ombudsman. Why is that word so hard to say? Ombudsman. Am I saying it right?
Yes,
it
you're
still
saying
sounds
it right.
wrong.
Yes, I was.
But that's a huge way to give back to your community.
Yeah, I was an ombudsman in Hawaii, and that was
That's a
big
full-time
'cause-
job on its
Yeah.
Going to the sports thing, like, because I was a competitive figure skater, so Iceland and Virginia Beach, that's actually where I would skate. But every Saturday we would go and teach learn to skate, which was wonderful. And then every summer, Iceland would throw like it's basically a way for parents to like give their children to Iceland, be like, all right, take them for the day. And then we would just like have small little events where we would like do arts and crafts or have them out on the ice and skate. So I definitely understand that. You know, it was an amazing time.
Yeah. I love stuff
I
like
used
that.
to do so much, like in high school and like growing up. The one thing that I've done since I've been in Virginia with the salon, like I said, we've tried to do some things to give back, and we actually threw a whole Christmas party for Edmark, which is a charity in Virginia. I believe it is only Hampton Roads area, but it might extend a little bit further out. But they help families that have had terminally ill children. So whether your child has been stillborn, whether you have a child that is just terminally ill, they go and they help the families. So we did all these decorations for this Christmas party, and then I actually got to go to the event and play little games with all these kids, and it was just like so heartwarming, and like I literally went home and cried because it was just like such an amazing thing, and it made me like feel all warm inside that we got to just, they're like, oh my gosh, we made candy canes and all these things, and they just were so happy and so grateful for everything.
That's really cool.
And I think those feelings are what's going to drive anybody who's serving in the community to want to do it more.
Yeah.
And you know, the old saying is it's better to give than to receive. And I think that when you're doing that and you're serving your community in a new way, you're working hands-on directly with somebody that you don't know. Like you're just kind of thrown to the fire per se, to like, hey, you need to work together, you need to do this event, you need to plan it out, you need to figure it out, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I think it's just great that then you're bonding and you're building those relationships, even though you may not have anything in common. And then once everything goes off with minor hitches, you know, it's
Yeah.
because nothing ever goes perfect.
Well, just look at tonight. I mean, look at, you know, we put a little thing on one of the spouse pages that we're looking for co-hosts, and you're
Yeah.
like, hey, I'd love to do this, and
Yeah.
you met with us, and, you know, we had email miscommunications, and you came over to my house, and you're like, what is this? Is it a Zoom? What's going on here?
My
And-
kids added to it.
No. And you know, we're just setting up and this is happening. It's like, it seems chaotic, but like in the end, like we sit down and we had this amazing conversation.
Yeah.
Like I feel like so much closer to you now
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
before, and it's just all about putting yourself out there, and
Yeah.
you never know what could happen.
Yeah.
So
I think it's great.
Thank you guys so much for watching. Remember to always bloom where you're planted. Be sure to subscribe. We do put on videos about every Monday, and we sometimes have feature Fridays on Fridays, so stay tuned for those to know when we do post our videos. Hit that bell so that you get the notifications on your phone. It'll pop up and you just click on it and then you can watch it. Comment down below ways that you guys have bloomed where you're planted, or ways that you are going out of your way now that we've done this episode and we hopefully inspired you to go do something.
and big thanks to Ashton.
Yes.
Big
so
thanks
much.
Yes.
For having me.
Alrighty, we'll see you guys next week.
Bye.